Well, it looks like I got a bad Schwintek motor. Put another motor up there to test it out, and so my wiring's good, my control's good, but of course this slide out is stuck in the M position, and I don't know if you can see this. I can barely get my hand right there, so I can't get access to the motor, which is way up there. So I got to take a lot of stuff apart just to get to that slide out motor. So it's really simple. I mean, all I have to do is take one screw out and lift the motor out and it's done, right? It's just never simple, ever. So I'm going to take this decorative fascia off first. It's just nailed up there. It's a fairly new Coachman Leprechaun. The viewer actually asked me to help him out with this one. So it looks like I'm going to take this off now. And hopefully this gets me what I want. But it looks like this is going to have to come out of the way too, because that's behind that. And that's just one solid piece all the way across. I mean, this is... Alright, so yeah, I had to take the fascia all the way across off, all the way to here, because it's all one continuous piece. So again, how do I put it? I feel like there should be sealant right here. Yeah, they got a dam, but who am I? Alright, well maybe I think now that I have room I can see the problem here. I pulled this harness out and you can see the black wire is no longer connected. Black wire and red wire are power, so that's why it's not moving. See if I can't get that motor out, and maybe I can just solder on that connection, because these things are expensive little buggers, so I'm trying to save them a little bit of money if I can. I'm just more concerned because normally there's a screw that keeps the motor down, but there wasn't a screw on this side, so I'll assume that's on the other side, and I can't get to it because the slide out's in. So this is not turning into a very exciting job. So if I go to the outside here, because I can't run the slide out because that motor is not turning, I can't get access to the screw that's usually either this side or on the other side. You have one little screw that holds it in place, interlocks with the motor. And I can't even get to the screws on this fascia because they're on the inside. So this is turning into quite the puzzle piece here. 50th anniversary, Coachman Leprechaun. Alright, so it's going to be hard for me to kind of show you what I'm going to do here, because this motor's stuck in here because there's a screw that engages the motor right there to keep it from lifting up, and I can't get access to that screw because of the way this has been installed, so I can't pull this motor out. My customer said that it was working and then it just stopped working, so I'm going to hope that this wire broke and that's why it stopped working. In order to make this work, I'm going to hack onto these leads right here and try to run this slide out manually. So I kind of have it mocked up with my test motor here. You just pry the cap off the top of it. There's the connection point that we're looking at there. And each one of these leads, those are actually the motor contacts that go to the motor. So if I can hook up jumper wires to those up there, then I can hook this up to a battery source and run the slide out manually. So this motor's turning. It's geared pretty low. This is actually a high torque motor. You can see how fast that one's turning there. So I'm hoping I can run this out manually enough to get that screw out so I can pull the motor out, fix the motor, and put everything back together without having to sell him a new motor. Because I know he's also trying to sell this motor home. And I don't know if I can even get a motor. So let's see what we can do first. Right, so this is what I got going on right now. There's a 12-volt motor, so if it's going the wrong way, I just have to change the polarity. See, we can't even see anything what's going on. So I got my battery hooked up there. That guy hooked up there. So now I just need to hopefully feed this down. All right, so I am able to bump it out a little bit. Just need to go a little bit more so I can get to that screw. Of course, this motor, front motor, is still hooked up to the control, so I can still bump it out using the control. But I can't run it too much, or otherwise it'll see a fault because the back motor is not turning. So I can only bump it a little bit at a time. And I did have to put all these screws back in over there, otherwise the drive assembly itself was just pulling out. So let me see if I can't run this out some more. So I'm trying to keep it from binding because I don't want to break anything. These Schwinteks are not supposed to walk. Supposed to go out evenly. See how we're looking now. So you can kind of see the screw up there. So now, can I see this one yet? I can. Let me see if I can't run it out a little bit more and take that screw out. All right, so I got it out far enough where I can get to that screw, which is right there. It's going to be a number 2 square bit Robertson's again. I'm just going to use my angle adapter on my drill to pull that screw out. So I'm going to get that screw pulled out. All right, so there's the screw. I got that pulled out. Now the motor should be able to lift up. So now we have to go back inside, see what else we have to take apart to get the motor out. Okay, so now with that screw pulled out, this should theoretically lift up. I should probably get my wires off of there, and my battery's disconnected there. Oh, there we go. We got it out. Now let's see if we can't actually get it out. Lift up. Pull it out. And there we go. I think I'm going to try soldering this wire back together. We'll reinforce that with some hot glue, I guess. This is I guess a first generation motor. Mostly you can tell because I don't know. This one, the newer ones have a connector right there. I guess a strain reliever you would call it. So let me see if we can't get that soldered back together and put it back on. See if we can make this work. Could have saved $500. All right, so I can't use that other motor. I mean, it could be easy to replace it, but that was a high torque motor, so it's geared differently and will run a different speed than its mate on the other side. I'd have to replace both motors at that point, or I'll have to get the right one here, which I can't even say this one will be available without replacing the other side. So trying to get this one working first is probably a better idea. And if we can examine this, if we can focus, you can see right there, that's where it was. And it looks kind of like a bad solder. I shouldn't be able to see wires sticking out of there. So it's more of a cold solder joint right there. So I'm going to try to resolder this. Luckily, I used to work with my dad at his toy train shop, and he taught me a little bit of soldering skills. And it's worked out a lot more than I ever thought it would. So let's get that desoldered, pull the wires out of there, and try to solder new ones on. Let that cool off a little bit. I think we're looking a lot better there. I think I got it all cleared off underneath there. I'm gonna go test this out, and then I'll reinforce that probably with I don't know about zip tie, but at least some silicone as a strain relief. On the top of this is how it counts the turns. So you have your Holoflex, whatever it is going to be, that turns with the motor right there, so it can count the turns. So if it gets out of turns with the other one, it'll turn the other one off, and then this one will catch up. So that's all that controller underneath does, is count the turns of each motor, and then count or see the amperage. And this is really small wires. These are like 22 gauge, 24 gauge it says. Can you focus? Focus right about there. It's just crazy to think that's what's running the slide out in and out. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I just have this motor hooked up. I'm gonna put you guys here to look at it and tell me if this thing's spinning, okay? I'm gonna go over to the entry door and push the switch. So let's see if we turn it or not. See if I can't prop you up. How'd we do? We see anything? Well, I've examined the footage and it looked like it was working. So that's good news. Looks like I almost lost the motor too. You guys didn't even try to stop it. All right, so let me go reinforce that connection right there, put the top back on, then we put the motor back in, and then we try the slide out. All right, so what I've decided I'm going to do is just put some silicone to link all those wires together. I can't go on the other side of the wires because I need to make sure that this spins freely. I don't want to bind that up. And I don't want to mount anything to this cap because I've seen these caps get pulled off too. And geez, if they have to pull this thing out manually again too, it's going to be hard if this cap's glued down. So let me just put some silicone on that and we'll call that good. All right, with that, it should be a little bit better strain relief now. Let's go put this back in. All right, now putting the motor back in is just everything in reverse. So all we're going to do is try to line up that D shaft into the housing down there, and then put the motor in. Without causing all sorts of problems. It might be difficult to see, but there's these 4 threaded rods down here. They're going to fit in pin or holes in that block down there. They're getting hard to see. It takes a little bit of doing. It's not so easy when you have clear silicone, or wet silicone too, but it sinks into place right into those tabs right there. So you just push down on it once it's all lined up. You might have to jostle the slide out around a little bit. So now we're down into those. Now I just go outside, put that screw in, and we can get everything out of the way and see if this is working. All right, I got that screw back in there. Wasn't a lot of room for me to do that. Let's get back down off the ladder here. So I need to clean up my work area here. Hopefully that motor should be locked into place. So get the wire hooked up there. Let's see if we can't make this slide out go out a little bit. I guess I should put this fascia back on a little bit, so we're not dragging it all around town. All right, so that's out of the way. Let's see if we can go out with this thing. Now we're going to be a little crooked because our count's definitely off. So because we're doing that, let's see. Kind of see I got about, I don't know, about 6 inches there. Right? And we're about flush over there. So what we should just have to do, which is going to be difficult because the fascia is not secured, would be to run it in and run it out. I'm just going to bring this in. I decided to bring it in and make it flush on the outside because I don't want to put the fascia on and take it back off again. So I don't know if you guys can see it hit the front turned off the front and then brought the front or the rear around. So let's look on the outside. So we're looking pretty good there. And we're definitely not closed up here. So to resync this, let me just go out with it a little bit. So it's in out mode, and then I bring it in. All right, so again, it stopped here, and let this one catch up a little bit. So again, we're looking good there. I'm gonna guess we're actually flush. So we're actually resynced in time now. Well, that was a lot faster than I thought it was gonna sync. So that's why it's very important to always hold the button down on the slide out room until it's all the way in or all the way out. So I put a screw in right there to keep this track from moving around so much. And it's hard to see, but I think I got the wires tucked back in there pretty well. So last thing I have to do is just put this back together. So before I put this wood fascia on, I need to put the rest of the screws down on this Schwintek track, and then I can put the screws back on the fascia, and then I have to put the decorative fascia back on. That's just brad nailed on. And then this job will be done, because I've already ran it in and out a few times. And then we'll discuss about this afterwards. All right. Okay, so with that, all the trim's back on again. So I have to put the cushions back in, and then we'll run this slide out back in. Okay, let's try this one more time, huh? Looks like we're coming in pretty good. All right, let's go on the outside. Look nice and flush there. And nice and flush there. So there it was, a Schwintek motor repair on a Coachman Leprechaun. What are we calling this? I don't know, probably 2015? So I don't know, guys. I'm not sure exactly how the manufacturer was planning on having this slide out be... Well, I mean, you could retract it manually because the slide would be stuck out, and you get those screws out, lift the motors up, push the slide out room in. Of course, you couldn't put the motor back in, but you could put something to wedge the slide out from going out. But having the motor, getting access to the motor was already an issue, which isn't uncommon on these Schwinteks. It's never as easy as it is in all their YouTube videos. But getting that screw, you can't lift that motor up without that screw out of the way. And if I couldn't have manually operated that motor, because let's say the motor was actually bad, I would have had to do some destructive madness to that motor just to get it out. I'm not sure that's a great design. What can you do about it though? All right, guys, we got it back working. Thanks a lot.